Krishna is fighting against that ignorance. Verse after verse, example after example. Ultimately, it is Krishna's love that won Arjuna over. He cannot comprehend what the teacher is saying, but this much he can sense that the teacher is trying very hard. If the teacher is trying so hard, let me listen. So the Bhagavad Gita is such a real and captivating story. It is an epic inside an epic. What's happening here? Firstly, I'll read it out to you and then explain. Once, the five senses disputed among themselves about their personal superiority. The five senses quarrelled as to who is superior among them. So once the five senses disputed, and each of them was saying, I am superior. Those senses approached the father Prajapati and said, Respected sir, who is the best among us? He replied, He among you is the best on whose departure the body would appear its worst, as it were. So the five of you are there. Which of you is the most superior? He said, the one upon whose departure the body would become the worst is the highest or the most superior. Getting it? So it's an experiment. The judgment has not been passed. An experiment is to be conducted, and the result would decide the winner. Alright, so the experiment begins. Speech departed. Speech is the first sense to leave the body to conduct the experiment. Staying an ear out, it came back and asked, How have you been able to live without me? So what's been your condition once I'm gone? This is gone. How have you been living? So the others replied, just like the dumb. You were gone, so we were living just like a dumb person. Not speaking, yet alive with the breath, seeing with the eyes, hearing with the ear, and thinking with the mind. So this much is your worth. Even after you are gone, the mind is functional and thinks, the eyes are functional and see, ears are functional and hear, and the breath is functional. So the organism is living, alive. So the speech got an appraisal of its worth and re-entered the body. Now the speech knows the value it holds. Who is the next one to go? The eye departed. Staying an ear out, it came back and asked, How have you been able to live without me? So the others replied, Just like the blind. Though not seeing, yet living with the breath, speaking with the organ of speech. The whole thing could say the tongue. Speaking with the organ of speech, hearing with the ear, and thinking with the mind. Right? So that's the worth of the eyes. Even if the eyes are not there, one still lives as the blind do. The next one. This is the way of Upanishadic storytelling. The way of repetition. Now you'll be able to predict what's going to happen in the next one. The very fact that you are now able to predict the next leg of the story tells that you are understanding the story. If you do not understand something, how can you predict it? So they keep things repetitive, the seers, for the students or the reader's sake. Once you repeat something, it goes within. That's the method, the tactic employed in a lot of spiritual literature, the way of repetition. Not only are the verses repetitive, you are actually asked to read the verses repetitively, in the sense that the same verse has to be read 20 times. The same verse has to be read repetitively for 20 years. You don't get done with it. You can't say, I've read it once and I'm done. You are supposed to read it every day. And then it no more remains reading. It becomes something higher. And if you are really reading it properly, then with every subsequent movement, with every next read, a new layer of meaning is revealed. The words remain the same, the meaning enhances. Are you getting it? So you cannot read the Upanishads or the Gita like a novel. You cannot say it's just like a movie where we now know the story, so the movie is finished on us. You can never read the Gita completely because several concealed meanings are still waiting to open up. Are you getting it? It's not usual fictional literature. It is a method that works by repetition. And if the very method is repetition, then how can you not repeat? The method will then not work on you. Getting it? Now, why is repetition the method? Yes? Because repetition has to act as an antidote to another kind of repetition. What is that other kind of repetition we are referring to? The repeated, continuous assault of the world on the senses. Is that not repetitive? Is that not repetitive? So when poison is being injected into you repeatedly, the rishis say that the antidote too must be regular and repeated. Just as you are being dirtied repeatedly every day, with dirt settling on your body, the bathing process too must be repetitive. Can you say that you get dirty every day, but would take bath only once a year? That would be foolish, right? So because life itself is a process of accumulation of dirt. How does the dirt accumulate? Through the senses. Whatever you see, in a sense corrupts you. Whatever you hear, in a sense corrupts you. So that is something that is happening again and again and again. Therefore, the observance of this too must happen again and again. That's the wisdom behind the method. Do you see this? So now the years are departing and you may very well predict what's going to happen. You can even predict the exact words in which it is going to be said. So the years departed, staying an year out, the year came back and asked, how have you been able to live without me? The same words. The rishis have no fondness for superficial innovation. They will not needlessly use synonyms to pretend as if something fresh is being said. In fact, they want to ruthlessly expose that nothing fresh is being said. Otherwise, you have speakers who do not have too many things to say, but they'll go on and on at 2,000 places for 20 years, speaking as if they are delivering a fresh sermon every time. How? By playing with words, narrating the same story in 20 different ways, using fresh idioms, clever metaphors, synonyms, this and that. The Upanishadic way is just the opposite. The three verses are exact replica of each other, just that ear is being replaced by eye, is being replaced by tongue. Deaf is being replaced by blind, is being replaced by dumb. They want to make it very clear that these three things are the same, implying that the three senses are the same. There is no difference. It is a certain unity, a commonality they want you to appreciate. And therefore the austere similarity in the three verses. And you will find this similarity continuing. It continues so that you get the message. Else we miss the message in diversity. Diversity is what deludes us, does it not? You look at one thing, it appears so different from the other thing that you get attracted towards it, even if you have burnt your fingers with the first thing. You burn your fingers with one thing, and you vow never to touch it again. That one thing returns to you in another shape and form and appears different from the first thing. Now you fall for it, and you again burn your fingers. So what does the thing do? It changes its apparels. It dresses up at something else and returns, and now you again fall for it. So diversity, in one sense, is the cause of your suffering, because all that which appears as diverse is fundamentally one, and not only one, it is false. How do you sum up the entire diversity in one word? What would that one word be? Mind. Mind. So this is all mind. And that's a mark of wisdom. When you look at stuff and you do not accord it 1,000 names, what is it? Mind. That's also what science does to an extent in the objective world. The common man would look at this and say, oh, this is black, this is Mike, this belongs to one brand, this is another thing, another thing, another thing, another thing, another thing. Science reduces the diversity. First of all, it will say that the diamond and the coal are one. That's something only science can say. To the commoner, the diamond is diamond and coal is coal. But science has reduced the level of diversity. Now, diamond and coal and graphite and something else are all just carbon. Just carbon. But still diversity remains, because carbon is different from nitrogen, is different from oxygen, is different from uranium. And uranium is so very different. Such a heavy atom it is, and radioactive. So you can still say, oh, diversity exists. All right. The diamond and the coal are one. But still, the diamond and the coal both are different from oxygen or from water or from some other compound. Now, science proceeds a step further and says, no, wait. Even there is no need for such diversity. They are all just electrons, neutrons, protons. So there is no need to say carbon is fundamentally different from oxygen. Both are just the same. What? Electrons, neutrons, protons. But then you'll say, oh, the numbers there are different. Science progresses a bit more and says, what numbers are you counting? There are no objects there. You can count numbers only if specific and different objects are present. There are just waves. Just waves. What are you counting? So that's something that science does in the objective world. The Upanishads do the same thing in the subjective world, within. They cut the clutter. They reduce the diversity. It's all the same. And that makes you very detached and equanimous. You understand equanimity? What is that? You start looking things as just the same. Now that's a spiritual virtue, but that can also come through science. That's just a spiritual virtue, but can also come through science. If you're a spiritual person, you'll look at one kind of food and another kind of food, and you'll say, oh, food is just food. So, fine. This one is probably just for 50 rupees, this one is for 5,000 rupees. But food is just food. So your spirituality helps you accept the both as one. You become equanimous, sambhav. The scientific bent of mind would look at these two and say, what? Calories, minerals, all right. How many milligrams of potassium here? How much sodium here? How many calories here? And he'll find probably that these two are comparable. He may even find that in terms of the elemental composition, the 50 rupees plate is better. So that enables him to look at the whole situation very differently. The problem arises when you are neither scientific nor spiritual. Then all that matters to you is appearance, delusions, the branding, the story that goes with something, the fiction associated with something. Now you cannot look at the reality of things because all you can perceive is the story, the fiction, or the brand, the imagination. Are you getting it? It's a mark of inner development when you stop seeing differences where they do not exist. And when you stop seeing useless differences, then you start differentiating the one real thing from the 1,000 useless things. Are you getting it? All our life is spent in something very worthless. We differentiate between A and B where A and B are both worthless. But since we have to distinguish the two, we start calling one of them as worthy. Otherwise, how will you distinguish? The fact is that you are playing the entire game between A and Z. That's your limited universe within the mind. And to entertain yourself, you are trying to find value in one of the characters. The truth is that the entire alphabet is worthless. But that's a very painful truth because that alphabet is all that you have. That's your entire world. So you are left with no option but to artificially declare M or Q or S or Z as important. How dare you admit that everything is false and worthless? That's how we proceed. And when you do this, when you artificially accept that M or B or Z or D has value, when that kind of compulsion you totally discard, then you come upon that which is beyond the alphabet and really valuable. But for you to come to that, first of all, you have to be free of the alphabet. Are you getting it? So, distinguish you must. But no point fooling yourself with false distinctions. And people act very self-righteously. They'll say, no, I'll stick to D because D is far more important than M. And they'll say, see, what kind of righteous man I am. I discovered that D is more important than M. So I acted as per the rules of justice. I kept sticking to D. And this fellow will appear very moralistic. This fellow will become an authority in his own eyes. He'll say, I'm better than everybody else because I found D better than M. And I remained wedded to D all life. Whereas the truth is that D is equal to M. D and M are not at all different. The difference you have created is fake. Not merely fake. It is dishonest because you are fooling yourself almost deliberately. Do you see this? Then there is the one who has the heart, the courage to say, I really thoroughly, honestly examined right from A to Z. It's all the same. To tell the truth, there is no difference. All the differences are just superficial. Yes, on the surface there are differences. When you go inside, they are all one. So then someone will come and say, oh, don't say that, because if you say that, what are you left with? If everything is fake, where would you go? Where would you live? Where would you work? Who would accompany you? Don't you want to have a house? Don't you want to have a life? Don't you want to be stable? Don't you want to have security and kids and some prestige? If you say everything is fake, how would you live? And you then need to have the gumption, the conviction to say that I don't know. I don't know how I would live. But A to Z, they are all the same. And I leave myself to the unknown. I don't know what would happen of me, but it's all right. I subject myself to uncertainty, and that uncertainty is preferable to deliberate dishonesty. Then something magical opens up. Are you getting it? Something magical just happens beyond the alphabet. But it cannot happen if you sit within the alphabet and crave for guarantees or reassurance or advanced demonstrations. Even in the spiritual domain, we act as customers. No? We ask for demos. We say, all right, I am prepared to, try freedom a little because you are pressing me so much. So I'll give freedom a shot for your sake. The guru is the salesman. So for his sake, the customer, the listener is prepared to try freedom for a while. A little bit, can you give me a sample? Or can you give me a demo? It won't work this way. You cannot be assured in advance. You have to run the risk. You have to put yourself through uncertainty and insecurity. And that's when the beyond opens up. Does it necessarily open up? You are again asking for certainty. I don't know. And you have to be happy with not knowing. Honesty that does not bother about the results. That's what is needed. If you're too bothered about the results, you just cannot be honest. Not possible. Are you getting it? So they are all the same. This. What does this mean? The entire world is just the same. Because the entire world comes to you through this. Equalizing the senses means equalizing every object of perception that comes to you via the senses. When you say eyes are equal to the ears, what does that mean? Everything that you can see is not fundamentally different from everything that you can hear. It's not about the senses. It becomes something about the objects of the senses. Are you getting it? And that's why there is this repetition present here. This repetition is not incidental. It is a deliberate method. So don't get bored. You are in a process. Are you getting it? When you don't nod, I get afraid. I don't know whether you are immersed in meditative trance or are you just fed up? So the ear came back and he was told of his worth. Now, the mind departed. The mind departed, staying an year out, it came back and asked, what did it ask? How have you lived without me? And now the mind is being shown its place. So the others replied, just like infants without developed minds. But yet living with the breath, because the breath is there. So the infants are there, they don't really have minds, they don't think much and all that. Yet living with the breath, speaking with the tongue, seeing with the eye, and hearing with the ear. So hearing this, the mind entered the body and humbly sat down. Oh, I have been shown my place. I have been shown my place. So, isn't it intriguing what's going to happen next? Huh? Okay, yeah, good. See, it's interesting on its own. It's actually a thing of these times that I have to artificially spice it up for you. I shouldn't need to. But because our lives are so drenched in spices these days, we cannot savor the taste of pure juice. This is pure juice. But it starts appearing tasteless because we have become accustomed to spice. So then there is a need for me to explain, elaborate, and make it a little more palatable for you. And then still wonder whether my efforts are sufficing. All right. Then as the prana was about to depart, it uprooted the other senses just as a horse of metal would uproot the pegs to which it is tethered. Now, prana too is in the fray, and prana says, now I am going to go, but as prana is about to depart, all the other senses too are uprooted. Without prana, eyes, ears, mind, nothing functions. So they all then came to it and said, "O respected sir, please be our lord. You are the best among us. Do not depart from the body." Then speech said to prana, "Just as I am the richest, in the same manner are you also the richest." So that's a climb down. Just a while back, that's just a few years back, because they all took a year each. What was speech declaring? Speech was saying, I am superior amongst all of us. Now, speech is humbly admitting, just as I am the richest, in the same manner you too are richest. So at least this much of humility. I'm not superior, the two of us are equal. In this acknowledgement lies the implicit admission that you are actually higher. But the speech, being full of itself, full of pride, cannot openly admit that. So all that it is saying is, oh, the two of us are equal. All right, bro. Same to same. Then the eyes said to prana, just as I am the stable basis, in the same manner are you also the stable basis. Whatever I stand for, whatever is best about me, you too have that, we too are peers. The claim of superiority is gone. Then the ear said to prana, just as I am prosperity. That's how the ear believes that the ear stands for prosperity. In what way only the ears know. Just as only the proud man knows what his pride is all about. The others cannot see that. No? Have you not seen vanity of that kind? That fellow is all puffed up and he believes himself to the most important man in the universe. And only he knows why. Others look at him and say, what piece of trash. But he says, no. If I am not there, the sun won't rise. So the ears come and say, just as I am prosperity, in the same manner you too are prosperity. And then the mind came and said, just as I am the abode, I am the one who shelters everybody, I am the abode, in the same manner are you also the abode. So verily, truly, people do not call them as organs of speech, nor as eyes, nor as ears, nor as minds, but they call them only as pranas, for the prana indeed is all these. Right? Now what does prana stand for? Who won the race? Who is declared the winner unanimously? Who? Prana. What is prana? What is that? What is that? Yep. Consciousness. Consciousness. Consciousness is what powers thought. Consciousness is what powers all the senses. To put it more precisely, the I feeling that arises from your physical body, the I tendency, that's prana. The I tendency. All your thoughts are founded on the I tendency. I stands at the center of all thoughts. Think of something in which I is not involved. Try. I is at the center of all thoughts. Even if you try to think about something distant, you'll find you are thinking about it because in some way you are related to it, else you can't think of it. Even it's a purely objective thing, like the rings of Saturn, like the moons of Jupiter, like climate change, like the snow in Alaska. Even in these things, the I is at the center of thought. Otherwise, you just won't think. It's impossible for you to think without being interested. What does interest mean? You have something at stake. Who has something at stake? The I has something at stake. Else the thought cannot arise. We talk of free thought or objective thought. The fact is, free thought is not possible. All thought is tethered to the I. So how can it be free? Yeah, there can be a long rope, we understand. But even if an animal is tethered by a long rope, would you call it free? The rope is long. Does that make the animal free? No. So thought is never free. Thought is founded on I, and that is prana. So that's the reason the mind is subservient to prana. And that also tells you what is the definition of life. When something comes to life, meaning when something has prana, it starts saying I. It may not utter from the throat, but the I tendency arises, and that's the definition of life. If you ever want to distinguish between something that is animate and inanimate, this is the test. Does the thing have a consciousness of itself? If the thing has a consciousness of itself, it is alive. If the thing does not have consciousness of itself, it is not. That's what happens when life develops in the womb. The embryo is taken to have come alive at a particular point or in a particular phase. That is when it starts having an I, an identity, an appreciation or concept of itself, however vague. It does not know itself, but it still can feel itself and therefore starts responding. Are you getting it? The body is special because even as the body is material, from this body arises something that is not completely material. And what is that? The I consciousness. And there is nothing in the body that you can independently, in isolation, look at and declare as the birthplace of the I tendency. Does the I tendency come from the fingers? Does it come from the neck? Does it come from the heart? It does not even come from the brain, really. Even if you are kind of brain dead, yet your lungs will respond to ventilators. What is this I? What is prana? That's the magic of life. The only way to know I consciousness is to give it fulfillment. As long as it remains unfulfilled, it remains unknowable. To know it, fulfill it. The interesting thing is, if it is fulfilled, there remains no urge to know it, because the knower departs. Are you getting it? So we were saying, do you know the one who looks out through your eyes? He is the master of the eyes. He is the eye. The eyes are doing his bidding. The eyes are his servants. The eyes are not random. The eyes are not performing a mechanical function. Had the eyes been random, why would you all have been looking only this way? Look randomly any other way. Because the eyes can look elsewhere as well. The eyes will have no problem. But there is somebody within who will have problems if the eyes start looking towards the door. There are so many other sounds floating around, are they not? The creaking of the chair, and there is some object outside and something is happening, and somebody just tapped his feet, something. Did you even hear? Because the ears are not random. There is somebody within who is trying to hear through the ears. And when he knows that something important is happening, he won't focus on the random things. Contrast that with this. What is it recording? Everything. What are you recording? One thing. Because this does not have pran. You have pran, so your ears become very different from this receiver. Even though objectively this receives sound waves in much the same way as this funnel receives sound waves. They both receive them in the same way, but they don't record them or admit them in the same way. Because this is devoid of pran and this is not. You could also take the example of this camera. Same thing. But that would not be a good example because the camera is not recording everything. You have prohibited it from loitering around. Right? So it's looking at just one thing. Are you getting it? It's very important to come to your fundamental identity. That's what these verses are all about. This is not some nice, juicy, entertaining take on the five senses and one of them appears as winner and nice. Contest over. No. It is to educate you in something very important about yourself. And that education, unfortunately, we do not get through our system. The education, social system, etc. The physical system obviously won't allow that education. Not making much sense. Do you understand the implications of what is being said? This is not important, this is not important, this is not important, this is not important. Of much more importance is the one driving all these. Especially because you are thinkers, intellectuals, you must know that thought is not very important. You have to look at the center of thought. The center of thought is the master of thought. And thinkers love to call themselves as free thinkers. This is what is telling you is that there is nothing called free thought. There is nothing called original thought either. All thought is commanded by and is subservient to the fundamental I tendency. Are you getting it? Stuff like new ideas, creative thoughts, innovation through brainstorming. These are meaningless terms in light of spirituality. True freedom is not freedom of thought or freedom of limbs or freedom of speech. True freedom is freedom of consciousness itself. Consciousness is born in bondage. Can you liberate it? The I is the master of speech. Now you want to have free speech when the master himself is in bondage. Not getting it. Go back to the Second World War. Britain ruled India. And let's say Germany starts ruling Britain. And would you call India a free country? Would you call India a free country? That's just as hilarious as clamoring for freedom of speech. Speech comes from the I tendency, and the I tendency itself is in bondage right from the moment of birth. So how can you have free speech? Therefore, in the name of free speech, all kind of nonsense is uttered. Is the speaker free? If the speaker is not free, how can speech be free? Who is the speaker? That I within. Is he free? He is not free. Why? Because he comes from the body. And therefore he carries all the rubbish of the body since birth. When the speaker himself is not free, what's the point in asking for freedom of speech or freedom of thought? Not that these should not be given. Obviously, one should have freedom of thought, speech, movement, trade, this, that, freedom of worship, all the freedoms that you want to have in the liberal sense. Obviously, you must have them. But having them is quite pointless. Not that you must not have them. The point is that even if you have them, it does not mean much. We are like free slaves, free to practice our slavery. How alluring does that sound? We all are free to practice our respective and favorite slaveries. Her favorite slavery is of one kind, his is of another. All kinds of slaveries. You choose your flavor. And you can top it with extra cheese. And then we say we are free people in a free land. What freedom? The most fundamental freedom is the freedom of the I tendency from its fundamental bondages. What are its fundamental bondages? What are you born with? What are you born with? What does the child do as soon as it is born? Cries. Ignorance, body identification, fear, anger, lust. That's what the I is captive to. If you are not free of these, what's the point in speaking aloud? What's the point in writing a thick book saying this is an expression of my original thoughts? Inwardly, you are fearful, lustful, vengeful. Outwardly, even if you are left free to express yourself, that expression would actually be polluting and poisonous to everybody. We talk of hate speech, for example, and we want to abolish it and condemn it, which is all very good. It's just that hate speech is not just steeped in explicit hatred necessarily. When there is ignorance within, then even normal speech is just hate speech in disguise. You may not realize it because there is no explicit hatred in that speech. So you cannot jail that person. You cannot condemn him. You cannot delete that tweet. It will appear like something very normal. Very, very normal. No, there is no hatred in this. The fact is, there is actually a lot of repugnance in that. You just don't realize it. And that's not an odd event. When you are not sorted within, then everything that you utter, everything that you do is just an exercise in hatred, division, lovelessness, suffering. You don't realize that. Inwardly, if you are not sorted, then even an I love you is an expression of deep hatred. Oh. Is that so? The fellow is expressing deep hatred by saying, I love you. Alarm bells. What to do? And if you are sorted within, even that which superficially looks like hatred is actually love. Therefore, Pran is the superior one amongst all the senses. Sort that one out. Is it so absorbing or so unacceptable? Both. Yes.
I have one basic question. As we are sitting here, you are talking to my I tendency, or you are talking to my the consciousness? Because when I get meditated in your speech, I find that I am unavailable here. But I'm still. I am not finding proper word for it, but I'm kind of deeply involved in it. I don't find my
Immersed.
I'm immersed. So, are you talking to the to my ego self, or are you talking to the consciousness?
I'm talking to the one who is in desperate need of these words. Who do the clouds rain for? The stones, the deserts, the rooftops? They rain for the one who is in need of water. Who is in need of water? That same one the Upanishads are alluding to. And therefore the drops are received differently by all. How do the stones receive the drops? With contempt. Drops fall on the stones and just break into splinters, don't they? That's the reception the stones have for the drops. The drops just come and shatter. And then there is the parched earth. How does it receive the drops? In love, in a most welcoming way. There is something parched and dry within all of us. It keeps waiting for the rains, but it cannot cause the rains. But in another sense, if its wait is honest enough, it somehow not only invites but actually creates the clouds. So then they say that when the student is ready, the teacher just appears from somewhere. So the question is not who the teacher is speaking to or where the teacher is coming from. The question is, what is it within you that is so anxiously and so lovingly waiting for the drops? If you can know that as your real identity, then you will invite more and more clouds. If you do not know that as your real identity, then you will have to be dependent on the accidental shower. Sometimes it will rain, sometimes it will not, but you will never find yourself consistently drenched. Are you getting it? It depends on you whether you want this to remain a mere accident. You were at some place and it started raining. So you found relief for a while and then you coolly, calmly, happily walked away. You could choose that option. Or you could be where the clouds are. You could say, quenching my thirst is more important than anything else. So why do I walk away? I have to be where the clouds are. No other place, no other task is more important. Of course, I am not answering you. Of course, the question was different. But this is something that needed to be said. Or have I answered you? I don't know. Yes.
Acharya, you said about the I consciousness, the Ahamvritti building. The day it is born, it builds so much attachments and kind of builds a framework for seeking that fulfillment. And that kind of loosely I translated into it starts building its baggage.
It's world. It's a world.
The world. And this baggage continues to grow, and my question about that is, it also seems to be changing its form all the time. Like lust is replaced by greed is replaced by something else. And you sometimes also get a feeling that the baggage has been released and you have dropped your baggage, but that turns out to be also because you are not free, so that also turns out to be eventually a misconception, a delusion, and in no time the baggage is again back there. So can there be certain, like visiting the scriptures, reading the text, can there be certain reminders that one can build within ourselves of not letting the new baggages get created and also
The entire scripture is a reminder. The scripture itself is a reminder. See, if the shape and form of the baggages won't change, how will you continue carrying the baggage? Because the baggage is in itself something very weak, very unappealing, very liable to be dropped. It's just a baggage. You're carrying it. It hurts. So how does it then continue to remain on your back and shoulders your entire life? By changing name and form and shape and thereby deceiving you. Otherwise, you would have gotten rid of it just after the first few experiences. No? All right, there is a man who loves ice cream. So he goes after vanilla. After a week, he gets fed up. Goes after chocolate. Then strawberry. Then something else. Then he gets fed up with ice cream itself. So rasmalai. Then all other kinds of sweets, 40 varieties. Then he goes after cakes, then pastries, then candies. Then he is reminded that he is gaining weight. So he starts going after fresh fruit juices. You know what he is actually after? Sugar. But because sugar in just one form starts getting exposed, therefore to deceive himself he starts consuming sugar in another form. Had sugar been available only in the form of vanilla ice cream, this man would have achieved liberation very quickly. Because vanilla would have been exposed. But vanilla very quickly becomes strawberry. Strawberry becomes chocolate. Chocolate becomes kaju barfi. Then it becomes rasgulla. And then it becomes some healthy option. Sugarcane juice. Even apple juice. So you can even claim with some kind of righteousness, I take only healthy drinks. But the fact is, all that you are after is sugar. That's how we remain deceived all our life.